In this video, I'm going to run through how to get down to 10% body fat, and I'm going to show you how, although it is difficult, not gonna lie, it's a lot more simple than most people make it out to be. So let's get straight into it. When we say 10% body fat, we got to be clear on what that is. A lot of people misunderstand what certain body fat percentages look like. Some guys will see the first hint of abs under really good lighting and think, yeah, I'm 10, 12% body fat. In reality, they're more like 16, 17%. When I say 10% body fat, this is what I'm talking about. It's not shredded to the bone. It's not like you're about to step on a bodybuilding stage, but there's no doubt that you're lean. Even in bad lighting, you can still see definition. You can still see your abs and the shape to the muscle. So now that we're all clear on what the goal is, why would you even want to get down to 10% body fat? I mean, firstly, it's just fucking cool. It's a level of leanness that most men will never achieve in their life. And let's be honest, most of us train because we want to look good. That's often why a lot of us first step in the gym. Yes, there's the physical health, the mental health benefits, yada, yada, yada. But a lot of us do it because we didn't like the way we looked, or we were okay with how we looked, but we wanted to look really fucking good. So we started lifting weights, we started controlling our diet. And there's nothing wrong with having a vanity goal. But there are legitimate reasons why you might want to diet down to 10% body fat. You could be doing it for a holiday, a photo shoot, you could be wanting to get in the best shape of your life for your wedding. Getting down to 10% body fat could even be the first phase within your physique transformation. You could be getting lean enough so that you can move into a reverse diet or a muscle building phase, which is a separate topic entirely. We're not going to cover that in this video. But you could even do it just for the simple fact that it's a difficult, challenging goal. And I think that is something that is very lost in today's world. A lot of people don't do things that challenge them. A lot of people who saw my results from my last photo shoot, they kind of just looked at me and thought, why did you do that? They couldn't get it because most people just don't want to put themselves through any kind of hardship. And this comes back to the whole thing of getting to 10% body fat is just cool. Yes, it looks cool, but it's also cool that you did something really fucking difficult. And you do learn a lot of skills through it. Discipline, accountability, doing what you said you would, especially when things get hard. So there's many reasons why you might want to get down to 10% body fat. Now, a couple of things what to expect if you want to get down to 10% body fat. Firstly, you will have to track your food. The only other alternative is if you build out a meal plan with a set amount of calories and you stick to those foods every single day. If you try and wing it, it is just not going to work. Second, you will get hungry. At the end of the day, you are purposely giving yourself fewer calories than you need in order to lose fat, in this case, lose quite a lot of fat. And with that comes hunger, low energy levels, low motivation to train, and it's something you need to know going into this. Thirdly, you will have to lose more weight than you think. Yes, we're going to use some calculators here to estimate how much weight you need to lose, but in most cases, what people think they need to lose in order to look a certain way is way off. If you think you need to lose 15 pounds to reach a goal, you probably want to double it. And finally, in this video, what we're going to do is show you how you can calculate your fat loss, how much weight you need to lose, how long it's going to take, but it is relying on a lot of estimates. So just take these numbers with a grain of salt. Right then, here is the plan. One thing I like to do is be very data orientated. I don't just like to go into a fat loss plan without any idea of what we're aiming for. So what I'm going to show you now is a rough idea of how much weight you need to lose and a rough timeline. So we're going to use an example here, but you can take all of this and plug in your own numbers. So let's say we've got a guy who weighs 200 pounds and he is an estimated 25% body fat. Now, again, these are estimates. I don't like measuring body fat based on digital scales, the calipers, because in my experience, they can be way off. What I like to do is probably less scientific, but I like to just base it on images because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. When we think of 10% body fat, we picture something in our mind. You see someone who's ripped, you don't really look at them and go, well, I think they're 11.2% body fat. No, you look at them and think, yeah, that guy's ripped. So basing it off images, pretty good way to go. So 25% is probably something like this, in my opinion. Now, what we can do with this number is calculate his lean body mass, which is everything on his body minus his body fat. So at 200 pounds, 25% body fat, it's pretty easy maths. We know that his lean body mass is 150 pounds. Now, in order to calculate what he would weigh at 10% body fat, all we have to do is imagine that 150 pounds is now 90% of his total body weight. Bear in mind, we're assuming that over this time losing fat, he's not losing or gaining any muscle, just to keep the math simple. So 150 divided by 90% is 166.66 pounds. However, I am going to reduce that target down to 160 for two reasons. Number one, like I said, you always want to overestimate, or rather underestimate, how much you need to weigh. And also because when you start a diet, one of the first things that happens is you'll lose quite a lot of weight in the first week or so from water, glycogen, and just the fact that you're all of a sudden eating less food. Now, to be honest, most of that weight will be lost within the first week. So we're going to set his real starting point at 195 pounds, which means for him to go from 195 down to 160, he needs to lose 35 pounds of total body weight. And if the maths is correct, this would take him from 25% down to 10%. Like I said, it may be more, but at least this gives us a rough starting point. Now, what I would do in this situation, because 35 pounds is quite a lot of weight to lose in one go, I would actually break this down into two separate phases. If this was my client, what we would do in the first phase is aim to lose about 10% of his total body weight. So again, 10% of 195 pounds, pretty simple, it's round about 20 pounds. So the first phase would be going from 195 down to 175. And if you do the maths based on his 150 pounds of lean body mass, getting down to 175 pounds roughly works out as about 15 to 16% body fat, which is a good little milestone to aim for within the first phase. The next thing we need to do is figure out what his rate of weight loss is. How much fat is he aiming to lose each week? Now, generally, I like to aim for anywhere between 0.5% and 1% of your total body weight per week on average. Some weeks will be more, some weeks will be less. Now, during this first phase, I would lean more towards the high end of this rate of weight loss, aiming to lose about 1% a week. Now, I know that losing fat fast gets a bad name, but in my opinion, it's a great way to keep motivation high. There's nothing worse than seeing how much weight you've got to lose and for it to take fucking ages. But also something worth knowing is that when you're at the start of a diet, when you've got quite a lot of body fat to lose, you can go a lot more aggressive without any negative side effects. As you get leaner, you have to be a bit smarter about it, and you're probably not going to lose as much weight each week. But for a guy who's 200 pounds, 25% body fat, he can easily lose around 1% a week or 2 pounds. So the first phase, we're looking at about 10 weeks of dieting. If you add on that first week or so where the initial 5 pound drop from 200 to 195 takes place, phase one would be looking at about 10 to 12 weeks. Then what I would do is have a little bit of a diet break. Put simply, this is where you would take a week where you increase your calories up to maintenance, give yourself a little bit of rest, eat a little bit more food, even if it's just for the psychological benefit. That being said, it's not something you need to do. If this client was feeling fine and they were happy to continue, then we might not take a diet break at this point. Next would be phase two. Now this would be where we go from 175 down to 160. So only 15 pounds to lose, but remember, he's now leaner, so we probably don't want to be aiming for 1% of total body weight. Now, for the first few weeks of phase two, he might be able to continue at the same rate, but eventually, as he gets closer to 10%, it's probably going to slow down. On average, over phase two, losing the entire 15 pounds, I would be aiming for something like 0.75% of his total body weight. So on average, about 1.4, 1.5 pounds per week, which if you do the maths works out as another 10 to 12 weeks. So all in all, the phase one and phase two, even if there's a little diet break in between, we're probably looking at something like 6 months. Now, like I said, this is just an estimate. It's not going to be perfect. He might need to lose more weight than this. We might have underestimated how high his body fat percentage was at the start. Or throughout the 6 months, he might have a holiday or a work trip. Or he could just have a week where he falls off track and doesn't lose any weight for that week. So although we can set a roadmap and say, yes, this should take 6 months, it might take 6.5 months, 7 months. We don't know, but it just gives us an idea so that we're not going into this fat loss blindly. So that is an example of how I would calculate how much weight you need to lose and how long it's going to take. That was the biggest part of the video because I wanted to go through an example. What I want to do now is just go over a few things you need to be aware of when getting down to 10% body fat, or just when you're losing fat in general. Firstly, your diet. Now, I'm a big fan of tracking calories. I'm very data orientated. It's what I teach my clients. The reason I like it is because it puts you in control. Now, that doesn't mean you can just eat anything as long as you hit your calories. calories. Obviously, we have to take into account food choices. You're also going to want to make sure that your protein is high, because this is going to help keep you full. It's going to help maintain muscle, which obviously that's the goal. You want the weight you lose to come from fat. Now, when it comes to other macros, carbs and fats, I don't tend to track both of them these days. I used to track my protein, my carbs, my fats, and my calories. All of these pictures that you see of me, when I dieted for this, I just worried about hitting my calories and protein. And carbs and fats, I kind of just let them take care of themselves. Now, generally, I would lean more towards higher carbs. Once I'm getting a minimum fat, for me, it was around 30 to 50 grams. The rest of the calories available would probably come from carbs. I want to have them high so that your training sessions are much better. You've got more energy for them, and it's going to help fill out your muscles as well. And when it comes to food choices, I'm going to keep this really simple. Just make sure that at least 70 to 80% of what you're eating is real food. When I say real food, generally what I mean is single ingredient foods. So this would be fruits, meats, fish, dairy, eggs, cheese, yogurt, whey protein, stuff that you have to kind of use to make a meal rather than just pre-packaged junk food. Last thing is training. Your training when you're dieting to get lean should be very simple. Your number one focus in the gym should be maintaining strength. You don't need to change to high reps with lighter weight. Ideally, you want to train in the same way that you would if you were trying to build muscle. This is something that a lot of guys get wrong. When we train to build muscle, the stuff that we do to build muscle is the same stuff that's going to help you maintain that muscle when you diet. And hopefully it goes without saying, you should still be training to get stronger. Just because you're dieting doesn't mean you can't make progress. The minute you start to think that you're going to lose strength, that's exactly when it happens. Because again, train like you're trying to build muscle, that is how you maintain it. So that is pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this. This was probably a bit of a long video. I haven't edited it yet and seen how horrendously long it is, but I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. You can always drop me a message on Instagram or Facebook. Hopefully you can take all the stuff in here and go and apply it yourself. If you want some help with that, like all of these guys on screen at the moment, then you can always drop me a message to inquire about one-to-one coaching. Literally just drop me a message, say hi, say why you're interested in coaching, what you'd like to achieve if we work together. We'll have a chat and see if it's something I can help you with. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one.